Oh man, do we have a good episode for you today? Today's a little bit lighter of an episode, very interesting, but fascinating to start the show off. We have Canada Day celebrations that are being announced by Stephen Guilbeault, the Minister of Culture, Heritage, and Quebec Lieutenant, and whatever other words you want to add to his title somewhere in there. He's the Cabinet Minister of all that. And he has a very interesting statement to make today. And then as well, on the heels of that, Quebec dropped some very huge information, a huge law that received royal assent just yesterday that really is going to change the culture of how the Liberals are going to run this country. It's going to alter how they treat Quebec moving forward. And man, oh baby, it's going to get very spicy very quickly. Welcome to the Deloitte Podcast, everyone. So great to have you. I'm your host, Josh. Grateful to have you all on with me. And yes, if you could like, share, and subscribe, you find any value from today's video and get any interest in it, we would love for you to continue to like as you come on in. Continue to subscribe if you can, and let the people know, let YouTube know that this is what you want to see more of, and hit that notification bell while you're at it. Now let's get into the first story, shall we? So we have this story of these two lovely individuals sitting at a Via Rail station in Ottawa, announcing events, announcing the festivities of what's going to be taking place on Canada Day in Ottawa. And Stephen Guilbeault is in the audience. He's ready to do his speech and ready to talk. But man, oh boy, it was... no hate to these people. These two people seem like fantastic individuals. They seem like really salt of the earth people. No hate on these, but gotta love up on them. It's just the situation that you're about to witness is, oh man, it's cringe and awkward on so many levels. And well, they are announcing what's going on for Canada Day in Ottawa, and boy, just get a load of this.
Yes, there is a very special reason why we are announcing our Canada Day programming here at the Via Rail station. And now, for a bit of what everyone is waiting for, who's performing on Canada Day? This year, for the National Noon Ceremony, we have the pleasure to present Amanda Marshall,
Garou,
Thompson Egbo, Ali Walker,
Raphaël Roy, et plein d'autres surprises.
Oh, yeah. I'm just going to drop this over here. So they're going to go over here and they do the little whoosh around. Obviously, we're going to have to keep the audio silent as they go through this portion. But so what's going to happen here is that music's playing. So you can picture that music's now playing. And this is going to pan out to this DJ off to the left-hand side of the stage, just by herself in a room full of 5 people. Stephen Guilbeault just watching. And she's just... That's what you think's gonna happen, right? Well, this is what you're getting. Let's go. A lot of this. A lot of this. And this goes on for 4 minutes straight, 5 minutes straight of just playing this music. And like they're kind of throwing different songs in there here and there because it's Canadian content music, but it's just going. Like, this is what's happening. This is the room. 5 people in this room listening to this. It's like, oh baby, again, no hate to the people on stage, no hate to the DJ. She's just doing her fantastic job, doing what she's been told to do. It's just, oh, whoever planned this whole event did not set these people up for success, man. Like, look, they're panning the room. Who's there? About the same amount of fans at an Ottawa Senators game. That's what you're getting in this room. Oh man, what a rough time. It's just, it's Stephen Guilbeault just watching on, looking on, hoping something's going to happen. And this just keeps going. And so I just wanted to share that as a little bit of levity to start today's episode because, well, Stephen Kubo then eventually gets announced and goes up to the pulpit and shares what's happening on Canada Day and shares about what Canada's all about, who we are, what our culture is, what our identity is, and that we are elbows up, baby. And it just leaves you scratching your head.
Whether by keeping our elbows up, buying Canadian, exploring the best of our country has to offer, cheering on our favorite Canadian sports team. Shout out to the Oilers. We hope they bring the Stanley Cup home this year. Or proudly flying the Canadian flag at home. We've shown that we are proud, resilient, and strong. And we've learned that we are stronger when we stand together. As Canadians, we share a unique identity, shaped by our history, geography, and diversity. From every corner of the country, we take pride in being part of this beautiful and vibrant mosaic, one that is uniquely Canadian.
So he goes on and, finishes that off and talks about all the festivities that have been going on for the Canada Day celebrations. But if you gather that, that was how he shared what Canada is. We're brought together under a beautiful mosaic, as they say, that we are defined by our geography. We're shaped by diversity. We are shaped by our history. Even though throughout the past 10 years, our history has been denigrated. Even though the past 10 years, anything that could be championed as something that's positive in Canada's history is seen as negative because of what happened with residential schools, which were awful. But we tend to take parts that are of our history that are dark and say, well, all of our history is bad and we're just bad people. So it is weird for him to get up there and say, no, we're going to celebrate our history, even though you were on the team for the past 10 years saying our history sucks, we suck, we don't deserve anything. Seemed kind of weird. And then to go on to say we are defined by our geography, we are defined by our diversity, we are defined by just that. We are defined by a piece of land. I don't find that to be a unifying message. That what we have in common is that we are on the same land. We are brought together by diversity. What vague notion is that all about? What brings a country together is our culture that we share in together. What brings a country together is our shared values. What brings a country together is our focus on how we treat others. There are so many other things that actually bring a country together. And that's, Mark Carney made sure to point this out during the campaign trails, we are a mosaic. America is the melting pot. America is the one that's founded on principles of their Constitution: freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom to carry, freedom to do whatever you want as long as you don't infringe on the rights of others. The freedom to be an entrepreneur, a freedom to explore and build businesses, the freedom to boom, 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 boom. The American mantra is very clear and simple. Canada's always struggled with what our identity really is. And you can tell with our Minister of Culture and whatever else, Canadian Culture and Identity, Parks Canada and Quebec Lieutenant, which, why do we do that as Canada? Quebec Lieutenant, let's call it what it is. Let's use words that we actually can pronounce here. If he is the minister of these things, even he, in this speech, struggling to find what actually defines Canada and what defines Canadians. Diversity is our strength was the mantra for so long, which is a fine mantra until the differences in that diversity become too much to overcome for certain cultures. Then what happens? What else brings you together? This was kind of just an interesting statement, an interesting moment, an interesting speech he's making, especially as someone who was on the team that's been trying to take down our history, trying to speak down of what Canada's been about for the past 10 years. Then all of a sudden, when it's politically feasible, when it's politically convenient, all of a sudden Canada's the best thing ever. And we're brought together by geography and diversity and nothing else. We don't actually have a distinct culture here for people to be a part of. We just have vague notions of ambiguity, hoping that people figure it out. And the reason why I share this story, and I start off with the story, is because, just yesterday, a law came into effect, a bill came into effect that received royal assent yesterday in Quebec. Bill 84. And this is what that bill is. An act respecting the integration into the Quebec nation. An act respecting integration into the Quebec nation. And the reason why this is very fascinating is what is said in the bill. So it starts off with an act respecting national integration. Quebecers form the nation of culture, which is characterized in particular by the French language as the common language, the civil law tradition, specific institutions, equality between women and men, state laicity, distinct social values, and specific history, which have led to the Quebec nation to develop a unique model of living together and full of participation by all in French and Quebec society. And then we move on down here. The purpose of this act is to establish the Quebec national integration model, which fosters the vitality and preservation of Quebec culture as the common culture and vector for social cohesion. Quebec culture, of which the French language is the main vehicle, enables immigrants and persons identifying with cultural minorities to integrate into Quebec society. The Quebec state affirms and establishes the Quebec national integration model. The model is based on the principle of reciprocity, according to which integration into the Quebec nation is a common objective and a commitment shared between the Quebec state and all persons living in Quebec, including immigrants and persons identifying with cultural minorities. minorities. So if you read that, you're getting the idea of what they're getting at, right? And this was the statement that really kind of cut the whole thing to bits, especially after what Stephen Guilbeault just said in his address there as the Quebec lieutenant. As a distinct host society, the Quebec nation has its own integration model, which counters isolation and withdrawal into specific ethno-cultural groups. The model is distinct from Canadian multiculturalism. And this is in the bill. We believe in integration, and we are going to incorporate this as a counter to Canada's multiculturalism. We want people to move here, and we want them to integrate into our society, not be separated and siloed into different groups. That's kind of what our country has turned into. Diversity is our strength. Yep, sure. You see this in Toronto, specifically, which is a very multicultural city. Yes, diversity is your strength, except for every group of people all live in separate neighborhoods. And that's cool at first because you had the little Italies, you have the little Indias, you have the little, you have these different pockets of Toronto that are kind of little Portugal that are kind of cool. You get to go to and experience the culture that's there. It's always fascinating. That's why I always loved living in Toronto. However, that stuff continues to grow. Divides continue to be built, especially as the tension in our social society has increased. People are going to build bigger silos. And again, it goes back to what culture are you sharing? If your only culture is diversity is our strength and there's nothing else holding it together, it's going to fall apart. Because if the differences between those groups become too much to overcome and there's nothing else to link those groups together, you're in trouble and tribalism will be the downfall. So what Quebec's asking for here is them trying to salvage their French language, essentially. Salvage their identity. Salvage their culture. And I honestly don't think it's a bad thing. Having a culture that people can integrate into is a good thing. That was always kind of what made Canada so cool, was the fact that people would come here from all different types of countries and they would integrate into Canadian culture and society. They would watch the shows we watch. They would enjoy the sports we watch. They would enjoy all the things that we've come to enjoy here in Canada. And we just also happen to be part of different ethnic communities. It was kind of cool that way. But over time, integration was seen as a bad thing. Integration was seen as bigoted. Integration was seen as racist. And we'd welcome groups of people here and tell them, you're good to stay where you are. You can have your community over there. That community can have that community over there. We don't even have to talk. We can just live here. And over time, tensions rise, things flare up, and then you start wondering where the Canadian identity went. The identity that brought people together. And I know this is a bit of a dicey subject, it's a bit of a dicey time. Quebec is making a very strong stance on this, and especially saying it in the act themselves, saying we believe in integration, and it's counter to Canada believing in multiculturalism. Where does this go? Mark Carney claiming he's going to be the prime minister that brings people together. Well, Quebec just passed this. Alberta is on the way out. What is going to happen next? And Saskatchewan may not be far behind. What are you doing to bring Canada together? What are you doing to help unify the country once again? Yes, Quebec's been quiet, but in their quietness, they're passing stuff like this, which is further separating themselves from the federal government and making Quebec their own thing while not actually saying they're separating. You know, when Stephen Guilbeault is going off about what he's going off about, fair enough, cool. He's the Canadian Heritage Minister, for goodness sakes, but he's also Quebec Lieutenant. And quite frankly, after seeing what Quebec passed yesterday, I thought this would probably be Guilbeault's next video, I imagine.
Why do our politicians make us give driver's license exams in 12 languages? This is Alabama. We speak English. If you want to live here, learn it. We're only giving that test in English, if I'm governor. Maybe it's the businessman in me, but we'll save money. And it makes sense. Does it to you?
Quebec yesterday says, here we speak French. If you want to live here, learn it. That's essentially what they've said. And I think that's going to be Guilbeault's next video. I'm just kidding. But it was kind of that video came to mind after I saw Guilbeault's statement, Quebec's act that they passed, and where do we go from here? Especially this statement early on in the bill where it says, the National Assembly has never adhered to the Constitution Act, 1982. Which was enacted despite its opposition, and as the Quebec state must continue building the constitutional foundations on which the Quebec nation stands, it is important to formalize the model for integration into the Quebec nation. They said the exact thing we've known and felt about them for years. They don't even acknowledge the Constitution Act of 1982. And some key elements from the 1982 Constitution Act was the introduction of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, the recognition of Indigenous rights, the equalization and regional disparities. That's why I find it funny that they don't recognize the Constitution of 1982 because it was opposition. No, we're focused on the Quebec state, even though we'll keep taking those equalization payments. That's the one part of the act that we do like. It is fascinating, though. We'll see where this goes. We'll keep following it and keep letting you know. But anyways, have yourselves a good one. I'm out.